The second topic would be the Exelon grant, the grant that we received from Exelon Corporation in the amount of $54,000. We received that check back in January of this year. The grant guidance essentially is to support all hazard emergency planning. I've reached out to Exelon. There is no definitive guidelines for this expenditure of that money. They just keep quoting the all hazard emergency planning concept of things. So they don't really have any restrictions on how that money should be spent. They just want us to focus on, again, all hazards planning. As such, I've got a couple of recommendations I'd like to present to the commissioners for their consideration. Some of them I've mentioned before, and my first one would be the request to add a paging base to South Londonderry Township. I talked to the commissioners briefly about that before. We do have some areas in Lebanon County that have questionable or marginal paging signal. One of the biggest, however, though, is South Londonderry Township in around 1 second.
What's the cost on the paging piece of this?
I can be specific. I have gotten a quote here for $16,000 and some dollars for just equipment. Now, there are some additional expenses involved in that. For instance, we would have to have a weatherproof box to house transmitter equipment in, UPSs, backup power supplies, that type of things. So there are some peripheral expenses involved in that. I quoted about $18,000 for that project. Okay. We need to take approximately $15,000 of that money, and I would like a data mining module of some sort for our CAD system. We've met with New World. I'm not sure at this point that the way they have their CAD module designed that it gives us all the information we would like to have. They've gone back to the drawing table. We also have some other second and third party options for extracting that data. I believe that would benefit this county as well as EMA in being able to extract data from that CAD module, maybe even for planning purposes and that type of thing. So I believe there's a dual benefit for that.
I'd like to, sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, about 21,000 left. Where are we headed?
Well, the Lebanon County Disaster Recovery Group, and I believe Commissioner Litz can probably address this as well or better than I can. They're newly formed, okay? They're operating under Jubilee Ministries, under their 501c3 as a volunteer group. I guess that's the appropriate word. They've actually been trying to reach out and do long-term support for our residents who maybe didn't get all of the support or all the funding that they needed from EMA and some of the other programs. They're working with other VOADs or volunteer agencies, church groups, Mennonite disaster groups, and things like that. They're trying to coordinate that, and honestly, that's really something that Lebanon EMA has found very difficult to do over the past few years. It's really hard for us, in terms of manpower and time, to keep our handle on those volunteer organizations and coordinate them. So I believe what they're trying to do is very valid. I think it's a really valid cause. I support it, and I believe there's value added to our agency and to Lebanon County by having this group in operation. They made a request for $8,000 in seed money. I went back to them and I talked to Paul Levan, who's their acting chairman right now.
He's actually the chairman now.
Chairman now, my apologies. My concern was how much of this money is going to be written to residents to fix their houses and things like that. You know, how many bricks and mortar types checks, okay, would they be spending this money on? And how fairly would that be distributed, and who made those decisions, what differentiates them from other church groups and other organizations that need that money? Paul wasn't able to really guarantee me that this money would not be spent for something like that long term. However, he did guarantee me that this money would not go directly to residents. In other words, if you have the Mennonite Disaster Relief Fund or company, they agreed to supply the manpower to repair your basement, okay? But they don't have the money for the actual material to do that. This organization, LCDRG, might be able to help them obtain the equipment, or I should say the materials, to facilitate that repair. But he's guaranteed me, like I said, that none of the money would be spent actually going to people, but in the support effort. I've suggested to him that I would be a lot more comfortable if we could support them as an agency, whether that's communications, office equipment, rentals. I mean, I would rather have something that we can articulate as opposed to individual projects out in the field. I'm bringing that to the commissioners. It's an $8,000 request.
I'm supportive of the concept of.
But I think submitting the invoices is not a problem. I think that
Okay.
can be done.
Just for the record, I agree with your comments. My concern are the bricks and mortar projects and not necessarily, like I said, the support of the program. I think they do bring something to the table. They're an asset for us. We talked about CERT. We don't really have an active CERT program. We talk about organizing volunteers during disasters. That is extremely difficult to do during a disaster.
Yeah.
Pre-planning and maintaining those volunteer lists does bring something to the table.
And I think it's there's a simple solution, and that is to assure those of us on this board that the money we give to this group is used in planning, not in facilitating direct services, and that can be accomplished by the submission of invoices and paying that money out to them as they submit those invoices. And
I'm totally comfortable with that if that's the direction of the board, certainly.
So if they have insurances that they have to buy, or post office boxes and things of that nature, that's what you're looking to do?
I'd say that would support that kind of a group in their seed money. I have no problem with that. I'm worried about that when I heard of, supporting the direct services of individuals' homes and so on. That seemed to blur the intent of that money, to me.
And I thought that might be an issue, which is why I reached out to Paul Levan and tried to get a direct answer. And I believe his intentions are not necessarily to spend it that way, but he wasn't comfortable with making the promise that it might.
Would he want to meet with us to hear these things in person, or are you okay conveying that?
I'm okay with that, or he offered to meet with the commissioners, or commissioner, he offered to come in here and do a presentation.
I recognize also, and this is not directly related to this, giving this money or sending this money in that direction, but I know Commissioner Litz serves on that board, but would it not be a good idea to have you specifically involved with the board that manages this thing, Dan?
We did invite them to be on the board.
We will be active
You
on
will
that
have a
board.
representative
Yes,
on the board?
yes.
Okay.
It may not be me individually, but we will have somebody from our office on this board and active in this
Okay.
board.
All right.
And they have attended the meeting.
And we have
Yes.
attended a meeting or two, yeah.
Okay.
Only been there. And many of those people I've already worked with for many years too.
Sure.
I mean, in Red Cross capacities and other volunteer capacities, so
All right.
they're not strangers.
All right.
I just suggest that if this is approved, then there'd be an award letter of sorts from Dan or from me that specifies in there that the intended use of the funds and that the invoices, that sort of thing. So
Very cool.
that's the simplest way to do it.
All right. I'll entertain a motion then before we.
Is that the total grant then?
Well, we're going to do it. I think we're just doing this.
We're just
piece of it
doing this one? Oh,
because she's
okay,
gonna. That way
okay.
she can vote on
That's
it the
fine,
rest.
that's fine.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion that with the specifications that we've already set forth, we give $8,000 to the organization.
Would you like to second it?
I'll second it, and then I'll abstain.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. We have a motion that's been moved, and now do you have anything else, Daniel?
Yeah, we're obviously going to have some money left over from that grant, and as you're aware, the commissioners voted to do an alternate PSAP needs assessment, and we've actually got that's been partially funded under Act 56. I would recommend, at least at this point, that we consider using the balance of that money to offset the cost of that needs assessment. I believe that's a valid expense under emergency planning, and it would certainly minimize impact to the general fund or some other sources.
This is for that 911 study that we're.
Yes.
Yes, that's certainly valid and makes a lot of
Also
sense.
moved.
All right,
Well,
and we're seconding now to approve
The
all
balance
the
of
rest
the-
of the.
yes.
All right, I'll second that. She made a motion.
Been moved and seconded that the balance of the money from that grant be used for paging the CAD module and the 9/11 study, subsidizing that. If there are no further questions, did you guys?
No, good, thank you.
Good. All in favor of the motion, please